So, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Ratlam Obs and Gynae Society, I, Dr. Neha Saraf, take the privilege of welcoming you all for this webinar on postpartum collapse. The time we spend here today is going to be worth because of the extraordinary speaker we have with us today. Welcome, Dr. Parikshit sir. To start the session, I invite our President, Dr. Manisha Maheshwari ma'am, for the welcome meeting. Manisha ma'am is the President of Ratlam Obs and Gynae Society, consultant at Maheshwari Hospital, and honorary consultant at Divisional Railway Hospital. A very affectionate person. Welcome, ma'am. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Neha. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Ratlam Obstetric and Gynec Society, I welcome our guest faculty, Dr. Parikshit Tang sir from Mumbai. He is well-known obstetrician and gynec consultant at Ashwini Maternity and Surgical Hospital, Mumbai. I extend hearty welcome to our chairpersons for today's session, Dr. Yashodhara Gaur Madam from Gwalior, and Dr. Kiranmay Devineni Madam from Hyderabad. I welcome all the attendees of today's meeting along with all my fellow members of Ratlam Obstetric and Gynec Society. The topic chosen for today's discussion is postpartum collapse. We all know maternal collapse in pregnancy and puerperium is life-threatening event with wide-ranging etiology. It is an acute catastrophic event involving cardiorespiratory system and or central nervous system, resulting in a reduced or absent conscious levels, and potentially there is risk of cardiac arrest and death. It can occur at any stage in pregnancy and up to 6 weeks after birth. Outcome of mother and baby depends upon the prompt and effective resuscitation. There should be an aggressive multidisciplinary approach to combat the collapse. Without wasting much time, I would like to start the program, and I will invite chairpersons, Dr. Yashodhara Gaur Madam, and I would take the privilege to introduce her. Dr. Yashodhara Gaur Madam from Gwalior is MS FICOG, Professor Obstetric Gynec in the Department of Gajra Raje Medical College, Gwalior. Vice President MPOGS. She is past Vice President and President of Gwalior Society and Vice President Medical Teachers Association, Gwalior. She has many awards to her credit: Best Surgeon Award, Nari Jog Kalyani Award, Yuva Doctor Award, Vishisht Chikitsak Award. She is member of various societies: FOXY IMS, IFS, MCI Committee. She is faculty and HIV/AIDS master trainer, RCH program trainer, and IPS trainer, IPAS trainer. She has been trained in ultrasound and laparoscopy. She presented papers in state and national levels, and she is organizer, chairperson of All MP Obs Gynae Conference 2019, vice chairperson of AGOI National Conference 2018. Welcome, madam. I invite you on the dais. Please introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manisha Maheshwari and Dr. Neha, the beautiful duo of Ratlam Obs Gynae Society. And I must appreciate that the endeavor of you both in organizing these CMEs and discussions towards updating your members, fellow members, is really very much appreciable. And your society, which is a nationally recognized society, you perfectly leading this society, and I must congratulate you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Today, the paper postpartum collapse. Today's topic is a nightmare in the life of obstetricians. Many a times when we thought that this patient is good and we are going to discharge her after 2 days, and next day we get bad news about her. So it's this postpartum collapse many a times we, as already Dr. Manisha has said in the preface, that many a times we know the cause that this patient may deteriorate, and in those conditions we may prepare for it. But some of the conditions like cerebrovascular accident, like pulmonary embolism, amniotic fluid embolism, these are the conditions which are real nightmare for the obstetricians. And to speak on such an important topic of postpartum collapse, we are having a very good speaker, Dr. Parikshit Tank. Dr. Parikshit Tank is a very meticulous concept clearing speaker, and I thought that he should have been in the medical college. Last time I listened his talk on this CTG and and it was so much appreciated, it's very well presented. So Dr. Parikshit Tong is MD, DNB, FICOG, FRCOG, and he is consultant Ashwini Maternity and Surgical Hospital and Center for Endoscopy and Assisted Reproduction, Mumbai, and consultant in the Jupiter Hospital, Thane. He is presently joint treasurer of FOGSI, and he has chaired Safe Motherhood Committee of FOGSI in the year 2014 and 17, and he is managing committee member of the Mumbai Obstetric Gynae Society. He has many awards and publications in his name, and some of them are Dr. Bhaskar Rao Gold Medal for first place at DNB, Dr. Kamini Rao Yuva FOGSI Curator 2011-12, over 100 peer-reviewed publications in Index Journals he deserves, co-authorized 4 books in OBGYN, and he is on the editorial board of 4 Index Journals. So I present you Dr. Parikshit Tank, a very good orator, a very good speaker, and I hope that all the participants will get insight into the topic and will appreciate the in-depth knowledge of the Dr. Parikshit Tank over the subject. So, Dr. Parikshit, now the stage is yours.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Gupta, I'll prefer to share the screen on my own.
Sir, are you able to see the screen now?
I can see the screen, but Arjun, I think I would prefer to share the screen on my own because the control of the slides is then more difficult.
No worries, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to start sharing.
Excuse me, sir. Meanwhile, I would like to request everyone else to mute themselves, please.
Yeah.
So that
please.
sir won't have any disturbance.
Okay. So I hope my screen is now visible to everyone.
Sir, it is not visible at the moment. Can you please share it again?
Yeah. One second. Is it visible now?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, my thanks to Dr. Maheshwari, Dr. Saraf for the invitation to be here and share some thoughts about this topic of postpartum collapse. And thank you, Dr. Gaud, for the very kind introduction and your kind words. This is a topic, this is a time when one has to think like a man of action and act like a man of thought. Postpartum collapse is something which will happen even in a busy obstetrician's practice only once in a while. And unless there has been some sort of preparation, some sort of mental readiness to face these kinds of problems, the outcomes may not necessarily be very favorable. So the plan for my talk is really a play in 3 acts. A problem-based learning approach, that's what I'm going to take. 3 or 4 clinical vignettes with learning points. And my focus is going to be on initial responses and practical implementation, because getting into the theory of each and every type of abnormality and reason for collapse and so on and so forth will be very cumbersome. So as one of the famous American generals Schwarzkopf said, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And what this basically means is we need to be well prepared. We need to spend some time with our staff members, imitating that there is a woman with a collapse in the hospital and what would each one of us would do. So that is what is called an obstetric drill. And of course, that should have a team with a well-defined leader. This gives an opportunity to check whether the systems and the infrastructure are in place or not. And what you must have on hand in absolutely every obstetric emergency is blood, blood, blood. There'll be plenty spilt on the floor, but you need it in the blood bag as well. So let's look at case one. She's a 33-year-old healthy primey in active labor since 6 hours. No progress since the last 4 hours of oxytocin augmentation. Action line is crossed. So you plan C-section, and at the C-section under spinal anesthesia, there is a fall in the blood pressure by 30 mm mercury systolic. The incision to delivery is quick, 130 seconds. Healthy male infant is born weighing 3.4 kilos, good APGARs. And she collapses, the woman collapses on the birth of the baby. So the first thing that hits everybody is, why did she collapse? So what we are going to look at are possible causes of maternal collapse in this situation: acute versus a gradual collapse, specific clinical pointers that will help you to come to a diagnosis. But the important thing is that there has to be a working diagnosis. This may change, this may evolve as the clinical picture changes. It might be that you thought that this is a pulmonary embolism, but it turns out to be a DIC, or DIC gets added to the picture as the clinical events unfold. But having some working diagnosis is important. So these would be the possible reasons why this woman has collapsed. Number one would be embolism of all sorts, pulmonary as well as amniotic fluid embolism, rarely an air embolism. It could be a total spinal where the level of the spinal anesthesia has gone too high, especially after she has been, put in a supine position. You might have given some head low, and that can cause this sort of a problem. It could be anaphylaxis because commonly an antibiotic is administered at the time of induction or just as the baby is born. It could be an arrhythmia or a hemorrhage. These are the reasons why she could have collapsed. Now, the main question which faces the obstetrician who's usually operating alone or with one assistant in a typical nursing home, what do I do now? And sometimes the obstetrician and the patient are in the same state of shock. So these are the general measures. Let's not forget the basics: airway, breathing, circulation, which have to be implemented immediately. And remember that unless you have somebody trained in the hospital who can do this, because you're scrubbed, your hands are sterile, you're standing next to the patient. Someone else, the anesthetist and one staff nurse or two staff nurses, somebody else has got to take this up as the prime responsibility. Thank you. Could the others please keep their mics on mute, please? Thank you. So you need an open airway with high flow oxygen, and you must call for help. Call for everybody who can come to attend to this patient in the hospital, as well as if you have good neighbors, call them. What are the problems in an obstetric patient which you would not face otherwise? There is a chance of regurgitation and aspiration because sometimes our patients are not on an empty stomach, and sometimes the airway is edematous, especially if this woman would have been a preeclamptic. Then the edema itself could have been a source for obstructing the airway. The second thing to establish is breathing. Assess whether she is breathing on her own or not, and provide breathing support. Now, here, one thing I would like to point out is when we say provide breathing support, it does not necessarily mean intubating the patient. Now, this is a situation where the anesthetist is right there. He or she is available and would be able to do it. But imagine if you had to resuscitate a woman who has just delivered, would you really be able to intubate her? It's very difficult. I can assure you of that. In addition to this factor of us not being trained to do intubations for adults, there's also an increased requirement of CPR. So as an initial measure, what you could do is simply hold an adequately sized mask onto the patient's nose and mouth, see that the fit is reasonably snug, and provide ventilation with an ambu bag. The third most important factor, circulation. Assess the pulse and volume, establish large bore IV access at least 2. There's an increased requirement and there is aortocaval compression in pregnancy. So it is important to resuscitate with fluids early and resuscitate fast. In a peripartum collapse, delivering the baby aids in resuscitation. Now, in this particular case, fortunately, the baby has been delivered. So that itself helps in the resuscitation. But in case the woman were to have collapsed, say just when the spinal anesthesia is given, the first thing that the surgeon should do is go ahead and deliver the baby by an urgent, absolutely rapid kind of an approach and get the baby out. These are the difficulties one would face in the resuscitation. Physiological changes are there. Altered demands in the CPR would be there. It's a rare event, as I mentioned right at the outset. We are not used to this. We are not trained, and sometimes the available equipment also may not be there. In addition to all these problems, even in medical colleges, there is a rapid turnover of manpower. You may have done a drill in January, but it's October now, and the resident who was taught how to do the resuscitation has gone on to another unit and he's no longer with you. So these are all the difficulties one should anticipate and plan for when it comes to resuscitating obstetric patients. What are the specific measures that you would now be interested in doing? That depends on what the possible diagnosis is. So if it is an anaphylaxis, then adrenaline and hydrocortisone. Adrenaline 0.5 ml of 1 in 1000 solutions, give IM, repeat it after 15 minutes if there is no response, or even more rapidly if the woman is collapsed and there is absolutely cardiovascular compromise. Give hydrocortisone 200 milligrams intravenously. If there are arrhythmias due to anesthesia toxicity, sometimes the lignocaine can enter into the vascular system. You would need intralipids. If it's a total spinal, you would need early resuscitation with vasopressors, phenylephrine or dopamine, and then intubate the patient, take care of her respiration. Fortunately, this is one of the type of etiologies which comes around quite well if you resuscitate it adequately. And if you suspect that it is a pulmonary embolism, heparin in large doses, 5,000 to 10,000 units. And if it's an amniotic fluid embolism, unfortunately, there's no specific intervention that we can do. But usually most practitioners advise to give that heparin bolus anyway. Let's come to case 2. 28-year-old primey delivers vaginally at term, 3.2 kilo female child, normal Apgars, no risk factors for PPH. Placenta has not been delivered for 20 minutes after the birth of the child. There is minimal bleeding, and in a bid to deliver the placenta and the cord, firm cord traction is given. It results in delivery of the placenta, but the woman collapses in the next 5 minutes. Yes, we all know what diagnosis we are looking at, but before we go there, a quick review of what the WHO recommends as active management of the third stage. Controlled cord traction is recommended for removal of the placenta in cesarean section. Yes, but when there is a lack of trained personnel available, you may actually not do the controlled cord traction. So it's very important that controlled cord traction is done in the right manner, with one hand supporting the uterus and preventing it from coming down and inverting. And this is something which has to be demonstrated and taught right from the beginning when a young resident is doing his or her first delivery. This is probably the most important thing that they should be taught when it comes to controlled contraction. Yes, of course, the diagnosis in this situation is an acute postpartum uterine inversion, and we did a review of the literature nearly 15 years back, and I think it still holds true as to how we can go about managing this situation. The important thing to realize is that women with uterine inversion have to be resuscitated with rapid infusion, oxygen, that is the usual thing, but an early recourse to vasopressors is also needed. This is so because the shock in this situation is not only a vascular shock, it's not a vasogenic shock only, it's also a neurogenic shock due to the stretch on the vasculature of the uterus. And because of this, only fluid resuscitation and oxygen will not provide adequate relief. There has to be vasopressin or dobutamine started very early in the course of these events. Now, if the postpartum uterine inversion has happened, this is the standard flowchart through which we would run and try to correct the problem. So what are the dilemmas that we face in a uterine inversion? The first thing is, when should you repose it? Should you do it immediately or under anesthesia? The recommended course is to do it immediately if it is possible. One important tip I would like to mention here is to squeeze the fundus of the uterus which has come out and then replace slowly with a fist which takes the fundus upwards. Now, this squeezing is important because even in the 30 seconds, 1 minute, which the uterine inversion has been noticed, there is bound to be some degree of edema. And unless you squeeze that fundus, it won't reduce through the ring of the uterine inversion. What is the cervix? What if the cervix is closing and there's a constriction ring which has formed? Well, here you have two options. Either you can do a hydrostatic replacement or you can do a laparotomy. You can attempt the hydrostatic replacement if the woman is stable, the equipment is ready, everything is all right. Then great, then you do the hydrostatic replacement method. That's also called the O'Sullivan's method. And here, having a hysteroscopy instrument called a hysteromat is very useful because this can drive the fluid with a certain degree of pressure in addition to what gravity can offer us. So first, the choice would be to do a hydrostatic replacement. But if you think that getting all the equipment assembled, etc., is taking too long, there is nobody to help you, and that's not going to help if the patient is already very unstable, then you would have to resort to a laparotomy. And at laparotomy, what surgery should be done? Conservative or a hysterectomy? Well, if the patient is unstable and situation is complicated by atony, then proceed with a hysterectomy. Here, one thing that the surgeon will have to do is restore the anatomy. You have to restore the anatomy, otherwise you will not know where the urinary bladder is. And if the urinary bladder is not retracted away, then there is a chance of damaging it as well as the ureters when the clamps are taken. So that's the important dilemma that one faces with uterine inversion. Case number 3 is 28-year-old woman collapsed in the postpartum ward. She had delivered by an elective cesarean 3 hours back. The indication was a previous LCS with an unengaged head. Surgery was apparently uneventful. Neonate was born with normal Apgars. She did not have any identified medical risk factors, but you get a call frantically from the postpartum ward that she is collapsed, not responding to verbal stimuli. So the first thing that you have to tell whoever is there on the phone is to start the resuscitation. And the two important things that we have to keep in mind are either hemorrhage or an embolism. So it could be a postpartum hemorrhage, bleeding from the suture line or extension which has collected intra-abdominally, or it could be bleeding from an abdominal wound Once in a while, you are going to get a rectus sheath hematoma, which can also be quite large, quite massive, if one of the larger vessels in the abdominal wall have been injured and not detected. And of course, embolism can still occur after a few hours. It may be detected at that time. So for IV fluids, volume and speed are critical. Type of fluid, what they have in the ward at that time, it could be a Ringer's lactate, it could be a normal saline, it could be a DNS, dextrose, whatever it is. Just start pushing fluid rapidly while the cross match comes, and you can actually give blood or blood products. So post-operative bleeding, usually the abdomen is distended and tender. A laparotomy has to be planned, preparations to be made. We have to look at what possible features that we might come across a laparotomy and what we'll do at the time of the laparotomy. So when it comes to preparing for a laparotomy in this kind of a situation, the first step and what has to happen simultaneously is counseling, consent, and documentation. And I believe a senior member of the obstetric team should be doing this. The consent and the documentation should not be left to the junior most house surgeon or to the new nurse who has just joined the ward. No, it's not their job. They can take the signature on the form, but the talking has to be done by somebody who is senior enough, somebody who's mature enough to explain what is going on. Note the timings, take a consent for further surgical interventions and an hysterectomy, because you don't know what you're going to encounter when you go in. Call for help, call other staff, call the blood bank, other gynecologists, maybe a surgeon. I would say call the friends and neighbors also. Whoever can give you a hand at this point in time are welcome. Continue with the medical management and monitoring. Infuse and transfuse, catheterize her, prepare for the further surgical steps, see that the instrument trolley, anesthesia trolley is laid out, there is adequate surgical material at hand, administer an extra antibiotic, and give an antiemetic at this point because she'll probably need a general anesthesia. There is going to be some disturbance, chance of regurgitation. So administer the antiemetic. And while you're waiting, once the patient has been shifted to the theater, in case you suspect that it is atony, you might attempt an intrauterine tamponade before going for the laparotomy. But here it's important to be quite certain about what is the diagnosis. If you're suspecting intraperitoneal hemorrhage with a firm contracted uterus, then this is certainly not going to help. One quick method of making the diagnosis and the distinction is to use ultrasound. If you see a large distended uterine cavity, then it could be an atonic kind of a picture. You might evacuate the clots and put in an intrauterine tamponade. But if you suspect there is a lot of free fluid, blood has entered into the peritoneal cavity, especially if you can see in the perihepatic upper abdomen, then you're dealing with intraperitoneal hemorrhage, and here certainly an intrauterine tamponade is not going to be of any use. So don't waste time with that. Just go ahead with the laparotomy. So what are you going to do? Keep a watch on the vital parameters. Look for free blood as soon as you open the peritoneum, and sometimes even before if it's a rectus sheath hematoma. Deliver the uterus, keep it compressed. One person, one assistant to just keep the uterus compressed and look for hematomas, because if it is a postpartum hemorrhage, an atonic postpartum hemorrhage, then the diagnosis is sometimes obvious from the amount of blood that she has lost. If it is bleeding from the uterine incision, you'll see a lot of free blood in the peritoneal cavity. But hematomas are sometimes quite deceptive. And you might see them in the broad ligament where they lead to a concealed blood loss, and it is usually secondary to extensions, and the anatomy is completely altered in these kind of situations. So what should you do in case you encounter a hematoma? Compress the hematoma and observe. Quite a few, at least half of them are going to get resolved or they'll break open with this compression. Suture the uterine incision extension, if there is any, which is usually the cause when there is a broad ligament hematoma. Once you've done this, release the compression and see how things are. if it is expanding, if it is stable. And if it is expanding, you have to open the broad ligament, evacuate the hematoma, trace the ureter very proactively, and retract it away. Do not take a single stitch. Do not cauterize anything until you have identified the ureter and kept it out of harm's way. Once you're sure about where the ureter is, the broad ligament has been exposed, then you can ligate the bleeder, confirm the hemostasis, and obliterate the dead space so that the recurrence of the hematoma does not happen. Then, of course, if there is intractable postpartum hemorrhage, what you're looking at is step-by-step repair of the lacerations, ligating the large vessels, go about it systematically, devascularize from the uterine, the internal iliac, and the ovarians. And as a last measure, if nothing else is working, then you would go ahead and do an obstetric hysterectomy. So that is the three clinical vignettes and the three situations where obstetricians might come across a postpartum collapse. One is absolutely immediate, a very, very acute kind of an event. The second is a little gradual over a period of 5 to 10 minutes. That's your uterine inversion. And then something which happens over the period of 2 to 3 hours. That's the typical hemorrhage which can affect this woman. Now, I'll just go through some rapid fire. Classic features of anaphylactic shock: sudden onset, rapid progress, airway shutdown, and look at the skin and mucosal features. Causes of postpartum collapse with a convulsion, what can it be? Yes, eclampsia, that's our standard diagnosis, but it can also be epilepsy once in a while, which may be known or unknown. It can be drug toxicity if the local anesthesia which you injected for numbing down the perineum, some of the local anesthesia has entered into the vascular compartment, or it can be an intracerebral hemorrhage or thrombosis. Causes of postpartum collapse specific to a woman with severe hypertension in pregnancy. Yes, of course, eclampsia, intracerebral hemorrhage, and cerebral edema. It can be a pulmonary edema. It could be a liver hematoma or a liver rupture, which can occur with HELLP syndrome. Occasionally, magnesium overdose when there has not been adequate monitoring. But this, I must re-emphasize, is something which is very, very rare. Cardiac pathologies leading to postpartum collapse, pulmonary edema secondary to valvular or congenital heart disease. We are seeing less and less of these problems nowadays. Replaced valve, again a rare pathology and dysfunction of that valve. But what we are seeing now is peripartum cardiomyopathies, and this is something which is going undetected because they are a little slow in their onset. It may be on the second or third day postpartum. Sometimes even later, after the woman has gone home, she might land up with a cardiac failure secondary to peripartum cardiomyopathy. So thank you very much for a very patient hearing, and I turn the mic back over to the chairpersons so that we can get going.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the very wonderful, very elaborative, very knowledge-packed session. It was really awesome to hear you, sir. From securing the IV line to hysterectomy, you covered everything, sir. I would
thanks.
It's a vast topic.
Dr. Neha,
Yes,
I am interrupting you. Dr. Kiran has joined. I would like to give a brief
I'm extremely sorry I could not join in time. It was a glitch, but I joined right in time. The first few slides that was really very extensive and very practical, I should say. No theory at all. ABCD of what to do and what not to do, and what clinical situations that we have to expect. Very useful, Dr. Parikshit. Really enjoyed it as always. And if I may ask one, it's a very post penimortem cesarean section, because in terms of resuscitation or when the patient is more these days we are having to resolve cases of moribund patients. experience with that. Take the mother, peripartum cesarean.
Peripartum cesarean, yes. This is indeed a very, very difficult situation. It's a difficult decision also. And
Yeah.
the important tips or the points which I would like everyone to remember is that from the time that a woman collapses, you have approximately 8 minutes to resuscitate her. So your peripartum collapse may be in the casualty, it may be in the ward, it may be in the operation theater or the labor room. It may be anywhere, but basically you've got 8 minutes to get this woman around, because after about 6 minutes, there's going to be almost irreversible neurological damage if the woman has been hypoxic, and beyond 8 minutes, really, it's a losing battle. So the decision to do the C-section is the one which is the most vital. So that decision has to be taken in the first 3-4 minutes, because it will take you at least a couple of minutes to organize a surgical blade, a handle. Don't look for anything else. Just look for the surgical blade and a pair of scissors, and you've got to do the delivery with just those minimal instruments. Don't bother about antisepsis, asepsis, all those things. Don't worry about where you are. Don't bother about anesthesia. Just go ahead and do it, because this is the one opportunity that you have. I'm not even giving any importance to the fetal condition. It's the one opportunity that you have to resuscitate the mother, because the moment the delivery happens, there is that much extra blood which enters into her circulation that automatically acts as this big massive transfusion. So that's number one. Second, it removes the aortocaval compression, and the demands for the cardiopulmonary resuscitation will also become more manageable with the baby out. You can then go about trying to repair the uterine incision, etc., etc., if the patient gets revived. But don't bother about consent, don't bother about antisepsis, etc. If the woman has collapsed, just remember that you have 4 or 5 minutes to get the baby out, to get this mother back into a resuscitated state.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Parikshit. I think any questions, Neha? And I was wondering about bedside to be as an armamentarium in assisting a patient with postpartum collapse. Does it help really? I mean, we are clueless most of the times when the patient collapses. A bedside 2D4.
Yes.
To rule out cardiomyopathy or cardiac cause.
Yes,
that
yes.
We don't know whether it's an ARDS and we don't know whether it is cardiac or.
Absolutely. So one quick thing, what you can do in this situation is, I know that we are not trained cardiologists, neither do we know how to do 2D echoes. But if you simply place the abdominal probe under the intercostal space on the left-hand side, you will be able to see the cardiac chambers pumping. And if you just place a few probes on healthy hearts, you'll understand that the cardiac pumping is something like that. And if you have a cardiomyopathy, the ejection fraction is next to nothing. The heart will be pumping like this. So you will immediately realize what you're dealing with. Don't bother, even if you can't, take measurements, look at the exact ejection fraction, etc. Don't worry about that. That's okay. But it will give you a clue, and that clue is very important.
Yeah. Anything else?
Ma'am,
Dr. Kiran, I would like to welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am. Thanks for joining, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Manisha ma'am to please introduce Kiran ma'am. Sir,
Yeah,
I have a question. 2 minutes more.
bother. Neha, please don't bother. I was able to join.
Madam,
Thank
I'll
you
give
so
a very
much.
brief introduction. Dr. Hello, am I
Really
audible?
okay, Dr.
Dr. Kiranmai is Associate Professor, Usmania Medical College, Hyderabad. She is Vice President, Hyderabad Society 2019-20, Scientific Convener of AICOG in 2011, and she has got many awards to her credit, and she is Master Trainer in many of the Government of India national programs, NHM initiatives. She is organizing joint secretary in ICOG, FOXY National FRC in Hyderabad in 2016, FOXY FIGO 2017 in Hyderabad. Welcome, madam. Welcome.
Thank you.
Neha, any questions, please? You can see
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
chat box.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question from sir. Sir,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
I had a query. Like in case of uterine inversion, we deposit the uterus back, and then we shift the patient to OT. So meanwhile, should we keep our fist, our hand inside the uterus the way we do in cord prolapse cases?
If there is atony, then you will need to do that. But if the uterus is well contracted, then there's no need.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I request our President Manisha ma'am for vote of thanks.
Okay, Neha. I thank Dr. Parikshit Tang, sir, for comprehensive and informative talk, sir. I am thankful to Dr. Yashodhara Gaur ma'am, Dr. Kiranmai ma'am for chairing the session and briefing the important points to be kept in mind. I thank all the participants, including members of Ratlam Obsgynae Society for patient hearing. At last but not the least, I would really thank Mr. Arjun Gupta from PharmaSynth Limited for sponsoring and arranging this webinar. He is very helpful and he has agreed to sponsor our further meet also. Thank you, Arjun. Our next meeting is also with again with Dr. Parikshit on 8th of October on troubleshooting in LSCS. So all of you are invited to please attend that meeting. And thank you, all of you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am,
See you.
one
See you
second,
soon.
ma'am. Mr. Arjun also wanted to say thanks to Ratlam Society and to sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ratlam.
Hello, everyone. First of all, the COVID-19 pandemic has totally changed the way we work. And in this different time, I am delighted to see how our beloved doctors have taken the initiative with technology. As we are all in healthcare sector, our responsibility is not only to ensure good health for all the citizens of our country, but also to elevate it. And due to our research mindset, an increasing number of diseases are getting successfully managed. So I'm thankful for this webinar, and I would like to thank Dr. Tang for the kind presentation. I would further like to thank, I would further like to extend a thank to FICOG and Dr. Kiranmay and Dr. Yashodhara. And last but not least, I would like to thank Rogs and Dr. Manisha and Dr. Neha for such an initiative. And thank you all the attendees.
Thank you.
I have tried my level best to ensure that the webinar can go on smoothly, but I still apologize for any mistake from my side. Thank you so much. And Manisha ma'am, you don't have to request me for any webinar. You just have to order me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Arjun.
Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you. Sir, in chat box we posted. If you have any questions, please type here. So we don't have any questions in the chat box, but the chat box is full of compliments.
It's
Excellent
full of
talk and excellent speaker.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
see you
you,
on 8th.
sir. Right. See you on 8th, sir. Yes.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Kiran
Thank
ma'am.
you,
Bye,
everyone.
ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you.
Bye. Thank you, Yashodhara ma'am. Thank you, Manisha ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yes, sorry, that app didn't open, so I had trouble. Sorry for joining late, but
No,
enjoyed, I
no,
joined within
no
first 2
problem,
hours
ma'am.
time.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. In spite of the trouble, you still joined. Thank you, ma'am.